Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ark episode 31. I have another episode for you guys for this upcoming federal election, probably on the 17th of May. I'm here with Jim Willmott from the Queensland Libertarians. He is the lead Senate candidate for the Libertarians. Now, if you're wondering, why does this guy look so familiar to me? It's because the other night, last week or a couple of weeks ago, we live streamed the 6 News debate, which actually showed Jim giving it to some of the other candidates, Gerard Rennick, Malcolm Roberts, but also the legalised cannabis candidate up there, which I'm going to ask Jim about in a second. And it was a really interesting debate. I love how Leo ran it. There are more debates that Leo is hosting like this, because Jim, I do believe you subtly got called a climate denialist. And I just, just off the bat, a lot of my audience was saying, I wonder what the panelists thought of that, because no one really responded. How did you find that debate, and how are you finding the campaign so far?
Look, thanks, Joel, for letting me come on. Yeah, look, I'm having great fun with the campaign, mate. And look, I'm getting to meet a lot more people that I wouldn't really get to meet, and establish a lot larger network. And the thing about me is I like bringing people together who've got a common goal, because the one thing about the freedom movement that I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years is that it's splintered, and I want to try and bring people together, and I think we're doing that, and that's what attracted me to the Libertarians to start with. The debate itself, it's quite difficult, like having a debate on like that. I'd rather face to face, but I was... Look, I get called a climate denier all the time, and that doesn't worry me. Let's put it out there. Like, I'm a farmer, and I've been in natural resource management with the government at local and state government now for about 30 years. And look, the climate is changing. Let's be honest, but I don't think we've got much to do with it, Joel. That's my take on it, mate.
No, I totally agree. Look, I really hope to see more of these debates. I hear rumours that maybe Leo will be doing more debates in Queensland, but let's see if he has time to smash them out, because he's still got other states to do.
Yep.
But Jim, a lot of people they look at the election campaign and they feel like they're sport for choice. I want to know, and the reason why I wanted to get you into studio. By the way, the reason why Jim's here is thanks to a great guy called Lachlan Lade, who connected me with the campaign in Queensland. Lachlan, we went to Washington, D.C. together to CPAC. We had a great time together. And he said, Joel, you got to meet Jim. You got to get him in studio. So thanks to Lachlan for arranging that. He's the number 2 on your ticket.
He's the number 2, yep. He's a great guy, mate.
He's a spear thrower, I say. And so I wanted to know, I said, Lachlan, who is this guy? Who is Jim? What is his backstory? Why is he getting involved in politics, especially closer to the end of his life rather than the start?
Yep.
And that's because you could be doing a million other things at this point. So tell me a bit about yourself.
Well, look, I'm actually from Western Australia, so I'm a sand groper, but I moved over here at a very young age. My dad was a 10-pound pom, and he moved over here, got a job as a shearer, met my mum, who was a shearer's cook. Right. And we progressively moved around Australia, settled in southeast Queensland, and got into farming, and been attached to rural and regional people all my life, and really love agriculture and what rural and regional people do for Australia. And I've also worked in Brisbane at a high level in the public service, doing cabinet submissions, whole of government policies, stuff like that. So I've seen the other side. And I've really seen like how Australia's changed, especially over the last 20, 25 years. So I really see that we're really moving away from what we were. We're getting lost. We're getting drowned out in all the political noise. And I think there's a lot of people out there in urban, country and rural areas that are voiceless and forgotten. So that's the reason I stepped up. Like you said, I'm happier doing some biosecurity consultancy out with rural and regional people, but I'm also passionate about making Australia a great place again, Joel, where we all have a chance to live in prosperity, value our family, and most importantly, value the freedom.
You got a family, Jim?
I've got an older daughter. I'm married. I've got a couple of 100 cows, 5 dogs, and a pretty cool cat. That's me, Joel.
I was looking at your Twitter, if we can pull this up, Rami, and you had something about my cows don't don't want a Bovore supplement. Is that Boerewors or Bovore?
Bovere.
Bovere, right.
Yes.
I'm thinking, this is a South African, he wants Boerewors. It's like, no, Bovere. Okay. And so what was the story behind this with your cows?
Well, look, it's because of the climate change narrative and certain sections of the society, corporates, the elites think that the methane coming out of the back end of cows and the front end of cows is actually contributing to warming the planet, changing the weather. So they brought in the supplement untested in Australia in reality and started to trial it and feeding it to cows. So it started to decrease that methane production. And supposed to, it changes their biology of the stomach. You know, cows have got multiple stomachs. And so it wasn't even tested by the regulator because it's brought in as a feed supplement. And so do we want this in our food chain? Like, if you start mucking around with the biology, physiology of cattle, which it's been there for millions of years, mate, to me that raises red flags. And really, I don't think cattle are contributing to climate change. So it was about, look, we've already got enough chemicals in our food chain. Why introduce another one that's not tested? And when you look overseas, there's a lot of other people jumping up and down about it, that it's going into our dairy products, it's going into our meat products. People want natural meat. Like, we try to be as organic as possible, and we pride ourselves on it, and a lot of primary producers do. And to have this forced on us, and that's the thing. Like in England, they're looking at having it compulsory. So it's coming here with the climate change narrative. It will become mandatory. And so, yeah, I did a thing and I went and asked my cows, mate, and they weren't happy. You know, they're out there eating grass. Yeah. We're promoting biodiversity. Why do we want something artificial fed to them? And worst of all, it's even got on the label, don't feed it to your bulls. Don't get it on your hands because it can affect the reproduction parts of men. Right. And animals. So that, again, my bull said, no way, Jim. Not doing that, mate. So why are we doing this? Why are we feeding this to our animals when it's got this on the label? It's just crazy, Joel. That's why, hence the video, mate.
Right.
Get out there.
I'm really concerned because you hear stories all the time, see viral videos all the time talking about, you know, like they're going after the bees with these sort of like, and also, you know, like these fire ant traps as well. And, you know, you really get worried about these things. They're slaughtering millions of chickens in the country, to hunt down bird flu. You know, I'm crazy. I'm over the edge right now with a lot of this stuff. So I do look at the UN stuff, and a lot of people on here do watch it, and they're like, is this an anti-human agenda where they're trying to basically, you know, cull off a lot of humans? That's what a lot of people think, because, I mean, are these supplements on the cows tested? What propensity does it have to ruin the meat of the cows? And these questions, I just feel like they're never really properly answered. It's just like, oh no, we've got to do it to save humans.
Well, when it says, and you have the manufacturer coming out that it's safe and effective.
Oh no.
You know, as soon as it says that, and it's all the corporations, you know, it's like the big Coles, Woolies, the big producers, the massive feedlots are saying, well, this is great, we can meet our carbon-free beef production. And it really joins up to that now, and it is a worry. How much of these things being tested? Look, in America, they had a 3 to 5 year testing regime. In Australia, it just went straight in with a few trials. Yeah, it didn't even pass our regulator. So that's a warning bell for me. And it is right through, like, if you look at a lot of the things that are impacting the food chain, when you've got the bird flu, you know, we've got a lot of exotic diseases on our shores. It's just over the water, mate, in Indonesia. You know, they've got foot and mouth. But the thing is, when you look at Australia and you just look at how lax we have been in letting these massive biosecurity threats build up, like look at the pig population in Australia, 26 million pigs, and they are a known amplifier for a number of exotic diseases. If something like foot and mouth got into Australia, we would not be able to stop it, mate.
Right.
Because these pigs amplify it, and pigs don't come along to a sign saying, well, this is the buffer zone, I'm not allowed to go past that. They just go. And what are we going to do? Put up signs saying you can't go this way, pig, you can't go that way? And so we should be, and this is really what gripes me, is because when you look at the climate change narrative, they say, well, yeah, we've got to cut back on carbon, end fossil fuels, go renewables, change our lifestyle. But all that is bypassed. You know, you've got things happening on the ground that are directly impacting the environment that we love and our food chain, when they could be focusing the billions of dollars they're pouring into climate change narrative in helping to protect our food chain and really help to protect the environmental values that are getting impacted every day of our lives. So really, the climate change narrative is actually having more of an impact on the environment, on our native flora and fauna, than what we're ever going to do with trying to change the weather.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, how would you stop something like that foot and mouth disease in Australia? I mean, how do you keep it out to start with and then go from there?
We've got to have, and I really liked, like when Indonesia had a really big outbreak, and we had those mats where people had to wipe their feet as they went through the airports. They're not there anymore. Like, you know, the risk is gone. The risk is there, mate. We need, the best way to fight any exotic disease or pest issue is to keep it out. And then once it's in, rapidly respond. And I think that we haven't tested our capability to respond to these things. Like, well, look at fire ants, mate. Like, they're covering 880,000 hectares. So they're right up on top of the invasion curve. There's no way we can eradicate them. So we should have tried harder when they were first here, and you get the best rate of return. So we need to really scale up our biosecurity in this country to protect the environment, our food chain and our way of life, because once things get into Australia, they seem to go rank like the cane toad.
Right.
So we've got a lot more work to do in that space, but we're focusing over here on climate change when all these risks are right out the back of the doorway. And it means big things, and it's going to be a really big change in our lifestyle. The more pests that come over, the more disease. It would destroy our country if something like foot and mouth came in.
Right, so that's pretty important to you, coming from the rural,
well,
background.
You would see what would happen in rural and regional Australia. And you guys in the city need us just as much as we need you. We produce your food and fibre, and we allow the cities to have, a great range of jobs because you've got food security and fibre security in Australia. Look, we produce enough food and fibre in Australia to feed 75 million people. We've got a population, 25 million people, a bit over. That's a great thing, and we can expand a lot more, but we need to make sure that we protect what's dear to us. And I think governments have been they haven't really worried. They've just sprinkled a bit of sugar on top.
Do you think that with, I don't know how close you followed the bird flu with the chickens, and do you think they went too far with that in Victoria, where they slaughtered like 500,000 chickens on a few farms?
Yes, I do. And I think it was an overreaction, but I guess you've got to put it in a situation. It's fairly dynamic.
It's hard to follow. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea about this topic.
I don't think, and it comes back to like a lot of biosecurity authorities around Australia, they're not transparent enough.
No.
I think that cuts across government in all levels, mate. There's a lack of transparency, and really that's why there's a lack of trust in government, because they're not seen as transparent enough. Yeah. They drip feed you the information. We should know a lot more about the bird flu situation.
Yeah. Yeah,
but we don't do it.
No, and on the one hand, that because they're so shadowy, a guy like me, a guy like yourself, and those that are listening, it's like, well, I don't trust you guys after the COVID era.
Yep.
And then on top of that, coming from a farming background, you understand the importance of biosecurity and not allowing your farm or your country to be contaminated with this stuff. But the real question is, is the government coming from the angle of you never let a crisis go to waste, so they take more freedoms with these crises that come up, real or manufactured, and that's what's going through a lot of people's heads. And it's like, we need more transparency when there's less trust in government, not less. And that's the problem. They just seem to hammer it, censor, and silence any farmers.
Definitely, it's all a top-down approach, and it's all more and more authority. Leave it to us. We know best. And you've got people in the regions, not just in Queensland but around Australia, that are jumping up and down saying we've got big problems. We've got that feral pig population out of control. We've got a massive amount of feral cats that are chewing their way through our birds and lizards each day, doing massive amount of damage. And just with, the billions they're spending and wasting on the climate change narrative, we could fix a lot of problems, Joel.
Yeah.
But we're not. So the things that are in our face and we could fix, we're not. And I think there's just so much money wasted. And I think a lot of people are getting so frustrated. But I do agree. It's the lack of transparency and accountability, and they'll just close you down. They're not even willing to negotiate or admit or take a really serious review of how they could have done things better.
Interesting. Another topic you might be able to educate me on, slightly pivoting. As I mentioned, you were debating the legalised cannabis candidate for Queensland. She's a lot more, as I said, off camera, and I'll say on camera, she was a lot more woke than I realised. I thought, legalised cannabis would be a little bit more intelligent in the way that they selected a candidate for Queensland, the highest no voting place to the Voice.
Yes.
I thought maybe they'd go for more of a hippie, slightly right-wing sort of person to peel votes off, but they've gone with the absolute radical, in my view, and I think that time will reveal that. But what is your view on cannabis, medicinal or recreational?
Look, I think cannabis has got a big future in Australia. Geez, Joe, I lived in Nimbin for 12 months when I worked down in New South Wales for a local government county council.
Yeah.
And look, I've been to heaps of communities down there that live with cannabis every day. Look, as far as recreational use on cannabis, sure, as a libertarian, I support that, but with rules. It seems funny that a libertarian's talking about rules and regulations, but I'm going to say it needs to have rules.
Yeah.
We just, don't want it sold to kids. You don't want to be driving under the influence of cannabis. But there is something there, medicinal use, if you want to come home and I'm going to say you just have a joint or something like that. Well, you should be allowed to in your own home. That's choice. We've got a lot of capability there in growing it as a commercial crop because there's a lot of uses of cannabis. I didn't agree with Belinda in the debate where it's going to overtake fossil fuels, come on.
Well, it is the way things are going. I mean, the banks are criminalising, basically. They're not providing loans to renewables. I mean, Macquarie Bank recently flipped on that, which is good to see. But no, I mean, who knows? Maybe she's right, the way things are going, the restrictions.
Well, they've got to, look, we're going to have rules around it, but I think there's a lot more scope there, and government needs to get out of the way a little bit and enable that industry to be developed. And I think they're just stifling it at the moment. But hey, look, cannabis in northern New South Wales was actually a declared weed, Joel, because it actually got out and went rank in the environment. And so that's another thing. You've got to look at the weedy potential of these things. You can't just go and plant it everywhere. You've got to make sure that it's not going to impact on biodiversity.
Do you worry at all about, again, this is a topic I really don't know about. Do you worry about it being, to play devil's advocate, a gateway drug to harder drugs like marijuana, heroin, or meth or something?
Not to me. Like what I've seen, and I've worked in a lot of communities, like around that Northern Rivers area, in the communes, and no. I don't think so. That comes down to a lot of other circumstances as well as just not just using marijuana. I think it's a wider set of circumstances that lead people to go onto harder drugs. So I don't think so. No.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people, they look at what's going on in Victoria with the injecting rooms for other drugs.
Yep.
And they're like, is it a slippery slope? And I need to do more reading on the topic, but as you and I were talking about, this candidate running for Queensland and the marijuana Senate candidates for other states, they could get elected. The chance isn't zero. It's closer to 14% than you'd like of the vote. So
it is, and that's what I thought after that debate. Well, Belinda could potentially be elected. And I implore people to just look past their support of cannabis and look at all the other issues that they would support. To me, they are progressives, and they would lean towards the Greens and left ideology.
Yeah.
And so that needs to be known. And it's a pity I really never got a chance to actually really promote our recreational use of marijuana because people were just looking at Belinda and saying, well, they're really the only party to look at that broad use of marijuana, but we're libertarians are also that party.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because there's so few of those debates. I really do hope Leo does more of them. That when we look at the questions that are being asked of you guys, it's like you actually have a similar, if not better, approach to the drug, staggering the approach.
Yep. With
marijuana, first doing medicinal, being very clear about what defines medicinal, because medicinal could be anything. I could say I need it for some BS reason.
Yep.
And then if say from there, seeing how it goes with regulation and then making it eventually recreational.
Yeah.
Again, not saying my opinion on it. I don't really have an opinion on it.
I have an opinion on it.
Oh, tell me, Rami. Yeah, what do you think?
Okay, so have you guys heard of something called hemp bricks or hemp blocks?
I think it came up in that debate.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Is that, Rami, is that for building stuff? Or?
That's for building stuff.
Yep.
It's amazing. It could really help, with insulation. It's amazing. You can't burn it. So in regions where you have, for example, wildfire and stuff like this, your building could be completely safe. And some other regulation that the government has on these farmers is that apparently if one plant out of the whole crop had just a slight percentage extra of the stuff that get you high, whatever it's
THC.
called. THC. They'll have to burn the whole crop.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, so it makes that process very expensive. But I could actually, I'm just weirded out by why the party is called the Cannabis Party and not the Hemp Party, because it's the hemp industry. It's not the.
Yes.
I was going to say about the marijuana party, one of the big problems we've got is the fact that it's a bit of a Trojan horse, because as you say, they're like, we're a one-issue party. We're not here to push policies on other things and this and that. This is our goal. Okay, but there's at least 30 other major issues you're going to be voting on as a senator, and you can be damn well sure they're not going to be abstaining, that's for sure. And so I want to point everyone to this graphic. We haven't filled this out yet, but I wanted to give you a very first look about how our policy matrix is tracking. We have picked questions on ethics, energy, health, education, economics, democracy, defence. How is the marijuana party going to vote on these things? And that's the problem. What you'll see is they'll vote, maybe yes to a couple of marijuana questions, and then everything else will be like a conscience vote. It's like that is not democracy. That is not knowing what you're buying. It's a bit like the voice referendum.
Well, we didn't know, did we?
Didn't know. There's no detail.
But there's that lack of transparency again. And I say this, even about, say, One Nation and Jared Rennick and the Libertarians, we're transparent. All our policies are out there to see. And, if you look at all the rallies we've had, I've put it out there what we stand for. I don't believe in the man-made climate change, but, hey, look, I believe in climate change. Look, if we want to just talk to that, it's about, look, we've got to adapt. No matter what Australia does, the climate is going to change regardless. So we need to adapt, which we're good at. We're the best farmers in the world. Look at how we adapt to cyclones and stuff. We can adapt, maintain our food security and food productivity to feed the world, and let's look after the environment. Let's have a higher level of environmental stewardship, mate, which we can get better and better at.
Yeah, when it comes to Queensland, a lot of people ask me the question. They're like, Joel, how do we vote? We've got two incumbents, and they've got both fairly good records compared to the other Liberal, Labor, Green MPs and senators in Queensland.
Yep.
And then we see other parties running in Queensland, like you've got the Great Australia Party running in Queensland, Trumpeter Patriots, you've got the Family First Party, and maybe one other party. And then there's yourself. You're running as well. So I wanted to throw this to you. Why do you think that Gerard Rennick and Malcolm Roberts, who you might end up replacing one of them or both of them, because we may only get one of you up, where do you think they're going wrong, and where do you see yourself filling that?
That's a damn good question, Joel. It's about, if you look, what's Malcolm been in 8-9 years?
I think so, yeah.
And Jared's been in 6 years. So, and the thing I say about those two, that they've really pushed for that transparency and called things out and brought the media attention to it. And that's exactly what they should do. They're crossbench senators. So, to me, what they've done, they haven't got the ground game. They haven't they haven't grown that grassroots community foundation. And I think that's where the Libertarians have that ground game. And I suppose, but even before I got into politics, It was all about getting more unity. Like people, like look at that rally we held the other day.
The Greens last,
put
was
the
it?
Greens way down last, Joel. Can you get any more further than last? Let me say that. Put the Greens last. It's about, like, we invited Malcolm and Jared along because and there was like nearly a dozen other groups that put aside their differences, mate. But we could all agree that we wanted to put the Greens last, and and this is what we've got to do in the freedom movement. We'll never agree on everything, and nor should we. Diversity is strength, yeah?
That's diversity of thought, maybe.
Yeah, it is diversity of thought. So
right.
we need to come together and make sure that, like, we actually have a ground game and bring those community groups together so we have more power on the ground. Because at the moment we're splintered and we've always worked hard. And that's why I think it's so important to get on the ground. And as a senator, what I would bring, I would do more work, like, sure, inside the Senator, voting, bringing transparency, but outside I would use the power of that office to unify people,
right,
and to build a solid community foundation. And I think that's what both Malcolm and Jared haven't done.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things I really like about the Libertarians around the country, again, I don't, it really depends which state you're in, because I support all the freedom parties. It depends on the seat, depends on the state. The thing I love about the Libertarians is that you guys do a popular vote for who's going to run for your party, especially in New South Wales.
Yep.
I think that's critical. I think you've got to run a primary, an open primary, where there's the battle of ideas, but when the parties all come together, they pick a candidate, they get behind them. I think Labor do that very well. They have a vigorous fight, all the dirt files come out.
They do.
Even the Greens are democratic,
They are.
Even the Liberal Party, to an extent, is democratic within the party, but highly factional. But the freedom parties, I totally agree with you. I don't think there's enough ground game. I've I'm not losing any friends saying this, but with Malcolm and Gerard and even Pauline, I've said this to them. I've said, and maybe not, I haven't said it to Pauline, I haven't had the chance. Very hard to reach her. I've said, why don't you run it local? Why don't you run it state?
Yes.
With these local campaigns, and look, One Nation do state,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't, all politics is local. If you don't run in local, you can't win state. If you don't run at state, you can't win federal. And you need branches with voting rights. Otherwise, people don't feel like they're getting a buy-in on which candidate runs for them.
Definitely.
And so the thing I love about the Libertarians, you guys did fight local elections in Queensland before the Libertarians in New South Wales or Victoria did.
Yep.
And you guys, obviously, you fought the state election. It wasn't the result you'd hoped, but you're building up the momentum for a federal. And you're fighting federal. And I really hope that we can get, your first MP up for the country in a long time since New South Wales.
Definitely.
And so, no, I totally agree with you with that. And look, with Gerard Rennick, I've said the same thing. I said, Gerard, if you get elected this election, you've got to democratise your party. Otherwise, you won't last.
No.
You'll be Pauline. You'll be stuck at that one senator every 6 years, maybe 3 years, and that's it. So
that's why branches are so important, John. And branches, we've got a lot of people. Like, we've been very active in the anti-renewable narrative over the last couple of years. Like in the last 18 months, I've done 80 community meetings in town halls, bowls clubs, making people aware of what's coming. This bulldozer of renewables is going to come and really take away what they've actually known in the regions. It's really going to impact them, and it has. And a lot of those people have seen myself and a lot of other people in that movement stand up. Then they've seen us join the Libertarians, and they said, wow, you're doing the same message in the Libertarians, and they're coming to us. And so they see that, well, if Jim Willmott is down in the trenches with us, standing with us in taking down a solar fence on a foreign company that has walked all over a young family's property rights, well, we like that, because that's what we like. He can get his hands dirty, and he knows about these things on the ground because he's right there beside you. And I think people are looking for a leader and politicians who can get down on that ground level and then take that fight into the big house, mate.
right.
And the thing with me is that, if you live in what I noticed in the public service when I moved from the regions into head office is that after 4 or 5 years, you lose connectivity. And if you're developing policy, if you're making decisions on legislation, How do you know you're making the right decisions if you haven't got good feedback loops, mate, with the people on the ground? Because look at policy development in Australia, Joel.
Yeah.
Look at the ridiculous policies that are coming out, and then they wonder, geez, it hasn't gone as well as we thought. Because they're not connecting with grassroots people.
Yeah.
It's continuously top down, we know best, or we parachute leaders into this area like LNP do. They don't even use their branches anymore, mate. There's some LNP branches in Queensland that have not met for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Ours meet every 2 weeks to a month.
Yeah.
So that is so important. You've got to have that connectivity. If you don't, you're isolated and you're living in a thought bubble. And a lot of that is happening right across the political spectrum, not just in the freedom movement.
Well, I will say, Jim, you know, in defence of the senators that are in there, once you get in, I think you will find this as well. The way that if you're not in government, then you don't get to say how much your office gets for budget. You know this. And one of the big and I saw this firsthand with Craig Kelly when he was kicked out of the Libs. He lost his staff budget. He was totally minimalised. He had to get rid of 3 girls. And he had no budget to basically get across legislation and read things. So obviously he had to fill that gap. Yeah. And so as much as the senators need to do and work and whatever, they're getting paid good money to do that, me, other third-party campaigners, podcasters, researchers need to step up and also be like, we need to back our guys in Canberra, because Canberra is the only place that voted yes. Yep. So you're isolated. What, you're going to find good conservatives, spear throwers over there? No. And that's the big problem I see. It's a team effort. Yeah, it is. And so often I see, people that want, Malcolm Roberts or Antic or Gerard Rennick or like even Canavan, he flip-flops sometimes. We see them get overwhelmed with this flurry of bills come through, and I'm like, guys, yeah, okay, you want them to cover a million things, but we have to step up as third-party campaigners, influencers online, I hate using that word, but influencers online, and just to mobilise the troops and build the tools and mass email the politicians so we can help these senators out. I mean, they're doing the best they can quite often. So obviously, that's why you're running as well. You think they could be doing better. Yep. But also on the infrastructure perspective, having just come back from the US with Lachlan Lade, your number 2, there's a lot of building we got to do too to back you guys up.
We do. We haven't got the foundation in place, and I think that's why we've got to unify the grassroots to make sure we've got that increased capability to feed in to the Senate and the lower house and to help that, because you know what the major parties are like, mate. They'll keep cutting staff and they'll keep trying to push through as many acts and actually flood us, so we can't do a good analysis. And that is why, again, I say you've got to have those good grassroots connection. You've got to have a team. We've got to build a machine, Joel. Yeah. And that machine is slowly building. We've got to get there quicker, and we've got to mature quicker as a freedom movement so we can actually get out and really start to punch above our weight, mate. Yeah, I do think a lot of people that they've got a bit of a saviour complex with others. They say, oh, let's elect Jim and let's elect other senators to state. They'll save us. And it's like, no. You got to tithe your time, just like they used to do it back in the day with the church, where they might give 10% of their wealth. You got to tithe your time. So if there's 1% of the time you give every year to deal with the political insanity, then you'll actually get more of your money back, because policy will be giving you more of your money back rather than the taxation. Definitely. Implementing a Doge, implementing all this stuff. What do you think about the wastage, speaking of which? Oh, it's out of control. You see wastage at every level of government, and a lot of it's interconnected. The federal government hands out dollars directly to a lot of local governments. They hand out dollars to a lot of the state governments, who then implement it, take their cut off the top. And if we went through the bureaucracy line by line and the budgets, and I think we would be astonished on the amount of waste that is out there. And people say, libertarians want to cut government, they want to decrease the size of government. We want to make the government more efficient. So the dollars that you're paying in tax, well, one, we want to reduce that. But the dollars that we are is actually being more effective and producing better outcomes that really mean thinking to people on the ground, that improves people's lives every day. So the money, and really, let's talk about it, Joel. Like the government, the bigger it gets, the more, I guess, invested they are in themselves, mate, aren't they? Well, where does it stop? Where is government going to stop? Like, I'm developing a real bureaucratic bent to me. When I walk around, I can feel that load. People say, Jim, you're getting a real hunch. And, mate, that is because the weight of bureaucracy that is being pushed on us at every level of government. Just an example, and I like talking about cows. I even bring some cows to our rallies, one cow.
Wow, no way.
Yes.
What a lovely place, Queensland,
Yeah, it is. Look, it's for me to roll one beast out the gate from my property, there's 77 pieces of different legislation and codes of practice.
You're joking.
No.
Wow.
It's insane. So what do you do? No, I was going to say something about his wife. I haven't met her before. I've never met her. Sorry, I don't want to get into a fight. No, I was going to say that, like, about what? Like, how you got to transport it in a certain vehicle sort of thing, or?
Certain vehicle, the livestock production insurance, a lot of biosecurity stuff, a lot of nature conservation, reef legislation, environmental protection, a lot of local, mate, there's heaps Soil Conservation Act, pesticide, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And that is increasing. And really, it's a load. I had a mate that's originally, that moved from Queensland to Georgia. And he said, when he wanted to start up a network of gyms here, and he just went, it was just like, when COVID was happening, mate, he said, I just can't. He moved over to Georgia, and he said, he started to stand up straight and walk around because he said, this is so easy, because we're like slow boiling frogs. And we're getting, we're really totally nearly boiled. And it is because of the weight of government that is invading every part of our lives and just making business so restrictive. Yeah. And that's why people complain about our productivity, mate. Our productivity is so low because we've got to wade through this mud of red and green tape and authority. People are always worrying what they're allowed to do. But you know what astonishes me? Some people say, govern me harder. Govern me harder. We want more rules and regulations. Well, no, we want less, mate. Let's open up. Let's so we can breathe, Joel.
Yeah, it was pretty funny when, you would have had a laugh too when Jared Rennick rode into Hansard, govern me harder, daddy.
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
That's gold, mate.
That's hilarious. That's gold.
That's right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what you put into the Hansard. But no, I was going to say, and also rainbow tape. I mean, the rainbow tape with regards to LGBT issues is just nuts. It's like, and they set up these bodies. They have these very overpaid directors. Even the universities, $1.1 million for Bill Shorten. He says, that's too much. Let's reduce it to 900,000. Still too much. And you see these, and the problem is with a lot of these NGOs and whatever, they get funded by government grants from here and the US, which are being cut. You see this situation where it's like they don't want to solve the problem because then they are abolished. So it's like, this isn't going to work. Well, there's no incentive in resolving the problem. Totally.
Look, don't get me going about... I've got my farmer pride hat I wear around, and look, we just look at it from afar and say, what's going on, mate? Have we moved to a different planet, Joel? Don't get me wrong, I'm going to say it out here. Can I say this? There's only two sexes.
Oh, no. We're going to have to... Can you edit that out? We can't say... We've got to have to edit that out. Right?
Yeah, we're going to...
It's no good. We're going to get nuked on all the platforms.
But, what they're doing... With the rainbow movement is really, you can do what you want in your own home. I don't care, but don't preach it to me. Yeah. And don't preach it to our kids.
Oh, yeah.
And so, leave our kids alone, Joel.
My audience is sick of me pulling out all these rainbow books. I won't go through them all, but it's just nuts, especially the Welcome to Sex one. It's shocking. Absolutely shocking. But it's a lot of parents are looking at this. And it's not just about the freedom movement. A lot of non-freedom movement people, like a lot of the Asians, the Chinese, they're like, hey, can you just go back to maths, English and science, for God's sake? So that, this is why I'm paying you top dollar at these schools. And they're going after everyone. I mean, Albo today, what do you think about this? This is breaking news. He said, we want the government to fund all schools. Fund all schools.
Yeah. What does that mean? That means, this is the curriculum you're going to be taught. Look, I've got a friend who has gone to a Catholic school in southeast Queensland, and 3 times a week at assembly she had to put her hands on the ground and apologise to the Indigenous people for invading Australia.
Oh,
and and she refused to and got persecuted.
Yeah.
God bless her. She had a lot of ticker. And that really brought a tear to my eye. Like coming into Sydney this morning, we had the welcome to country. And what does that mean for me? Like I'm flying into Sydney, the welcome to country. Like it's just, sure, I don't mind it at specific Aborigine events, Indigenous events, sure. But mate, it's just an overuse. It's just virtue signalling, just off the charts. Just stop it. And I've got a lot of Indigenous mates that saying, what are you doing, Jim? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And it's just stop it.
Yeah.
It's just wrong, and it's just, I think it's driving people up the wall.
Nothing beats that.
No.
Labor minister that went to Saudi Arabia, was it? Or was it Abu Dhabi or something? And they did a welcome to country there. And they said, we want to acknowledge the traditional owners of Abu Dhabi. I was like, how did that happen? How did that get through your staffer, you?
I'm working on a documentary now, and there's at least 50 Aboriginal people involved with me on the project. They all agree with you guys with what you're saying.
No welcome to country, they're saying.
The only people I've came across who are for it are the people who dance and do the welcome to country ceremony because there's money in it.
What is it, 3,500 for every welcome to country smoking ceremony in Canberra?
Yeah, it varies. That's right.
This might be out there. I don't know if you need to cut it out as well.
Yeah.
No, I'll leave it out.
Thanks, Rami. You're looking out for the episode. Yeah.
I'll just say it.
Go for it, mate.
I find a lot of these dancers very untalented.
The dancers?
Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Mate, we've said more controversial stuff on the show than that.
Cool.
Come on, man.
Cool.
We've seen that. Anyways, it's really funny, Rami, looking out for the show, making sure they're untalented. Yeah, no, look, but that's the thing, they throw their cousins in. Oh, just do it.
The kids. They don't know what they're doing.
No. Yeah, and it's just like
a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and they don't know how to dance. Like,
Jim, did you ever see that Q&A episode where at the end, sometimes they do a musical item, and on one time they had a transgender pianist. She was singing, and then she stopped, and it was like a joint piece with an Aboriginal guy and a didgeridoo going like.
That was hilarious.
And he started laughing at her. He started laughing at her. Because it was like this weird contemporary sort of impromptu sort of performance. And it's like people are sick of it. No wonder Queensland voted against The Voice, the highest.
Well, you know what else is happening in Queensland is with, we've been locked down with COVID. And now we're being locked out of a lot of our state land and national parks.
Oh, yeah.
You've got it down in Victoria with the Grampians. You've got Mount Warning. They want to take around the top of Mount Panorama. You no longer go to a Lake Eyre anymore. And a lot of, like Australians are outdoor people. And they love getting out in nature and experiencing nature. And it's good for your soul. It's good for stress release, and it makes you appreciate the beautiful country we live in. But they are slowly locking us out and restricting of what we can do, where we can go, and not only what we can say. And people are worried. Like I've got a lot of contact with a lot of four-wheel drive groups, a lot of recreational hunters, a lot of mountain climbers. And even behind that is, and they're using, the sacred site stuff, or it's not safe. It's not safe to climb Mount Warning anymore. It's just, and they're using.
I was there the other day, and you know who's looking after that place? A white dude.
Yeah.
What's your point about that?
So they restrict you from going to these places, and that's one of them. And I was there in person, and there's a huge housing thing going on there for, it's like sort of like camping.
Yep.
For people who are looking after that place, that Mount, what was it called again?
Mount Warning.
Yeah, and it's just white people. I didn't see a single Aboriginal person in that place.
And
they government employed. Yeah.
So if you guys want to follow anything on this topic online, I know Back to the Bush, Armin, he does a phenomenal group. He runs a Indigenous environmental charity, which is basically, he's teamed up with a bunch of Aboriginals that actually have a phenomenal background on this, and they are doing great waste reduction on these national parks, and he's heavily going against the locking out of, people enjoying the environment. He doesn't want to see people, litter either. We want to take care of our country, and we've got the most pristine beaches in the world.
We have.
But in the world, that's not, Joel, just because you're Aussie. No. We've got the best beaches in the world. But both in terms of how clean they are, but also both with regards to the natural beauty of the sand and everything. We're sending sand to California, for God's sake.
We have beautiful sharks as well.
Beautiful shark. And this is the thing. If you don't educate your kids, and if people don't get buy-in, then they're not going to feel like they own it and they want to protect it. And there's nothing greater, and I don't think there's anything offensive about saying this, there's nothing greater than seeing a recent immigrant to this country. Like, I saw a Chinese guy the other day in a massive four-wheel drive. Two things that I didn't think matched. But then I thought about it. I was like, Joel, this is the greatest thing, because he is experiencing Australia and he is getting buy-in and he's integrating. And if you don't have that, if you're locking people out and you're further restricting them, they'll not only will they move overseas, they won't feel like they actually want to take care of the place.
They're not part of the place.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they don't appreciate it.
No. I've got to get Armin in for an interview soon, because his argument, you probably know about this already, is that if we do more frequent burns in the actual in these bushland areas, then we won't have the massive bushfires that actually destroy the biodiversity. Because when you have less frequent burns that are massive because there's so much load built up thanks to green policy, what ends up happening is when it happens, it's a massive burn. You can't get it under control, and it burns down the soil level and destroys the biodiversity. So some places, when you drive up the coast to Newcastle, you can see still on the side of the road, even to Queensland, you see it still hasn't grown back from fires that happened 5-10 years ago.
No, it destroys it, and it destroys it for a long time. And that's just, again, green ideology, not listening to science. And all that fuel reduction. Regular fuel reduction helps massive bushfires, from not happening. And that kind of approach and ideology has gone from a federal state government level, bled down to all the management of our natural parks, national parks and state forests. And let me say that I would doubt, like in Queensland, I get you in New South Wales, one of the worst neighbours you can have is state government, because they don't do enough burns, they don't maintain their fire trails, and that next door private property you do, because it's part of regular property maintenance and living in tune with nature. But you look across the fence, there's heaps of feral pigs, heaps of lantana, heaps of weeds. And that's what's really worrying too under this. Let me say they want to expand the national park estate. I think it's 30% of Australia by 2030. As part of the international agreement out of UN. So I think it's going to add another 60 million hectares to the nation's national estate. But no more national parks until we can look after the stuff properly that we've got, Joel.
Yeah.
Because if you lock something up and you don't control the invasives, if you don't do a burning, and if you don't keep your fire trails clean, it actually destroys biodiversity. So we're actually doing something negative towards the environment when we should be actually making sure we're actually proactive. You know what it's called? It's called good land stewardship. And you've got to be active in it. You can't just lock it up and leave it.
No, absolutely.
And that's where they should get community groups more involved. Why aren't we getting community groups more involved? Why aren't we getting... Look at... I get approached a lot by recreational hunters. Why don't we get them more involved in managing the feral load in a coordinated way across the national state land estate? Why aren't we doing that? There's heaps of things we can do.
And this is why I think a lot of people feel like it's got an anti-human element to it, this whole green renewables climate change movement is... It's all doom and gloom, and it's all like apocalyptic language, when in actuality... When was the last time you saw one of these groups organise a pick up rubbish day or a plant a tree day?
Yeah.
They never do that. I think it was Nigel Farage that pointed this out a couple of years ago. He said, our policy at Reform UK is the Trillion Trees program. We want to plant 1 trillion trees around the world as a part of this policy, because it's a positive policy, pick up rubbish day. Yep. That's how you know these people are full of crap, because, true conservatism, conservatism lies in the farmers. The farmers have to take care of their land so they can pass their kids on something. Yep. That's what it means to be a what would you say, an environmentalist. They are the first environmentalists.
They are the true environmentalists.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've been demonised by the Greens and the left in that we destroy the land. We don't want to destroy the land that we rely on for our income. We want to leave it in a better position for the next generation. And that's the think tank. Like, I've spent all my life looking after the environment, whether it's controlling locust plague, mice plague, mouse plagues, doing massive statewide campaigns on like invasive species, exotic disease control preparation.
Yep.
And like, you've got to get active. You've got to get out on the ground and do things. You can't just do it up here at, well, no, we're going to put a tariff on or a different rule on. You've got to get out of the office, onto the ground, and go and say, control a weed, plant a tree, clear up a fire break, do some controlled burning, cool controlled burning.
Yeah.
People aren't doing it, mate. You know what's happening in Australia? We are the world champions, I say this now, at bureaucracy. Let's do a strategic plan that may be a foot thick and we can put it on the bookshelf and we'll never look at it again, but it's there. We've done the job.
Let's do an inquiry.
No one knows how to get out and do some action-orientated stuff on that. And that's where Australians have got to get back to.
Yeah.
Mate, that's why that movement on the ground, that grassroots community is key, because we want action. People want action. They look at politicians now and go, oh, here we go.
I don't hold a hose, mate.
Yeah.
Scott Morrison.
Yes.
And the bushfires are on.
Yeah. Or carry a sandbag, Dr. Jim Chalmers.
Oh, yeah. It's tough. It's tough. Though. Everyone hates politicians, so it's not easy, those shoots. But you could be a little bit more like, this is the stupid thing about, when there's a bushfire on and, governor of California or, the President Trump, they'll be in the situation room with the the environmental body that's managing that, and they're just like, and it's like, snap the photo.
Yep.
It's like, he's not actually doing anything. Those people on the ground are doing stuff. They're just sort of watching. But everyone feels like, Peter Dutton or Albo, he should be there, he should be on the ground. It's like, no, he's the Prime Minister, for God's sake. Let's be real about this. What's he going to do?
Yep.
If anything, it's just information for him to improve policy. That's it.
And that's a good point. Really, when you have natural disasters, bushfires and that, guess who's on the ground? Your volunteers, your rural fire brigades, your SES. And you know what? They are just, and I'll keep saying it, they are getting plundered with bureaucracy, mate, to a point where volunteerism is on the decline. We need to support our volunteers more. Isn't that a fundamental, where people within their own community want to protect their own community, and it builds community, doesn't it? Volunteerism builds community, and it is on the decline because it is getting squashed by government policy, mate.
Every time we hear a story about shortages with police or nurses or SES or firefighters, we always come back to this question about the bloody mandates. Like, remember when those floods were on up the coast?
Yep.
I forgot the suburb, but it was in just sort of central New South Wales.
Yeah, where people were sitting on the roof, literally.
They were sitting on the roof, and people that weren't vaccinated, who weren't able to help through SES, they were like, you know what? I'm going to get in my ute. I'm going to get my little dinghy.
Yeah, they broke the rules just to help. Yeah,
they broke the rules just to help people, and it's just and you're right. It's bureaucracy. It's like, oh no, you can't help because you're not vaccinated.
Yeah,
for God's sake, you can't. Hey, the military, it hasn't broken this story. It still hasn't really come out. But a lot of the military guys, they're being kicked out unless they get vaccinated.
By the way, remember the photo op that the government had at that place you were talking about?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
That was insane. I'm pretty sure that was back when Dom Perrottet was still the New South Wales Premier.
Yeah.
But the name of the suburb is really annoying. I can't remember. It starts with L.
It wasn't Lismore, was it?
It was Lismore. It was the Lismore floods.
Yeah.
That's right. Graham Hood talked about that at the time, and he went up there, and a lot of people went and organised the Freedom Movement actually really organised well up there for that.
They did.
And raised tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Oh, and they sent so many things as well, and fully loaded trucks.
Yeah.
I scroll through my Instagram, and all these people who are, the unvaxxed, they're all heading there with trucks, and they're renting trucks, filling it up, and taking it there. That was amazing.
That reminds me of another occasion. Remember when that kid, that relative of Alan Hashem, the kid went missing? Yeah. And people wanted to go and help, but they couldn't because they weren't vaccinated. just is just the level of bureaucracy. It's just eye-watering.
It hasn't gone away, has it? But I'll tell you what hasn't gone away, that Australian spirit of helping each other out in a disaster. Even though they're trying to squash it, they're trying to divide us with identity politics and that, mate, it is still there. We need, and that's with the freedom movement, we need to get that together more, connect with it more and use it, mate. And I think that's really going to help us get more power.
I said this a while about the freedom movement. Sorry, Jim, I feel like I'm doing all the talking here. I'll come here to come to Sydney so I can tell you about stuff. No, the great thing about the freedom movement, we're about 15% of the country.
Yep.
In every state, that's roughly the combined Senate vote. We are the most solid and hardened of the groups. When the crap hits the fan, we try to help feed each other and take care of each other.
Yep.
Whereas if you look at all the other groups, it's full of a bunch of individuals. They're really on the lookout for themselves. The Greens, the moment the crap hits the fan, they're the first to break in and, sort of steal some stuff. That's the sort of demographic.
Yep.
Whereas with our people, you're right, there is that Aussie spirit. And that's obviously what you're trying to bring back.
Definitely, mate. We need to try and bring that, unite it, and use it. I call it a spear, and I heard you mention a spear before, because we've got to form ourselves into a spear so we have the biggest impact. We're never going to build a machine as big as the two parties,
sure,
the two major parties, but we can build a machine to give people an alternative voice that's going to make a real difference.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you about, the Libertarians are a unique party. If you look at, for example, the Trumpeter Patriots or One Nation, it's more of a top-down approach and a universal approach.
Yes.
There aren't many state nuances, per se. They don't change policy based on the state.
Yep.
And so there's not that local sort of feedback to the HQ, per se. And that's not controversial. That's just a statement of fact.
Yes.
With the Libertarians, the thing I also like about you guys is you have that independence as a state to do what you want, to negotiate your own preference deals, to negotiate what policies you run on. So the Libertarian broad church, you have some underlying common threads of liberty, but you also have some nuances. I'm not trying to start a crap fight here, because I like, I'm friends with all you guys and Libertarians, but I'm just curious, how do you view yourself as the Queensland branch of the Libertarian Party versus the New South Wales and the Victorian?
Well, first of all, we're better at football. I'll say that straight up. And look, we're different. Like, we've got the same principles, overarching principles, the same values, but we are separately constituted. And Queenslanders are different, mate. And I say that in no disrespect to Victoria or New South Wales. And I guess, and that's what drew and is drawing a lot of people to the Libertarians is, again, back to that diversity. You're under the same umbrella, but you can have slightly different policies. And I think, like, compared to New South Wales, well, look, they've even got slightly different branding. They've got a separate ticket. Where, they put Craig Kelly first, Hart second. We didn't go in that direction initially, but we're keen to look at that in the future. It was just a bit of too short a time frame, and that was okay. We all agreed with that. And then there's Victoria, and like Victoria, look, with Jordan, David Limbrick, great guys. They do things slightly differently, but that draws strength. That's not to say that we don't sit around a table like this and have some big arguments.
No.
Debates.
And you do, yeah. It's great. It's awesome, though.
Isn't that right? It's better sitting around the table going, oh, yeah, whatever you say, mate, you're at the top. We'll just cop it sweet in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria.
Or we'll split off and make our own party.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys just sort of are like, look, this is why we have borders. We're different people.
Yeah. You
guys, in Victoria, you know what? We'll hand it to you. You've gotten some councillors and some upper house members elected in your own right.
Definitely.
Same with New South Wales. I can, and me, in my view, and Jordan Ditloff, I'm not, he was on the other day, and I'm friends with John Ruddick. I say openly to them, I say, look, Victoria, I get it. If you guys are more left-wing than the New South Wales guys.
Yep.
But both of you have managed to get an upper house member up and councillors up at council.
That's right.
So kudos to you. But similarly, in Queensland, you've also got it, and they lend you credit for the local knowledge.
Yep, definitely.
Of Queenslanders. So
yep. The wheel just needs to keep turning more and more in Queensland and growing, and spread the word that what the Libertarians are about. And you're right. I think it's good to have to be slightly. We don't want to be the same, Joel. It'd be boring, wouldn't it? And that's where you develop policies that are slightly different to suit the people that you represent. And that's the way it should be.
The freedom vote's huge in Queensland. It's the biggest in the country. I mean, not only was it 70% no vote, but the freedom vote's like 18% combined, which is nuts. I mean, in other states like New South Wales, it's 12.6, Victoria, it's 11.5. It's like I look at Queensland, I'm like, mate, you guys, if you really go hard, you might even be able to get 2 spots up.
Wouldn't that be great? At the Greens' expense.
I mean, the Greens or the Liberals, I really don't mind. I just want people of conviction,
People of conviction.
That's the word.
That's what we're missing. Well,
well, I mean, they're kind of in the freedom movement, libertarian conservative Christians. But no, I mean, not necessarily Christian, but you know what I mean. The Greens are of conviction, but they're crazy to the left. So they love climate policy and worshipping the goddess Mother Earth, Gaia.
We have got something similar to the Greens. I can agree with the Greens on a few things. They used to want to protect the environment. Who in Australia doesn't want to protect the environment?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to protect our food systems? Right? We have got but it's just that's where the difference. That's where it ends. We want to actually do it, and they just want to divide and conquer and separate us. We want to bring people together, mate, for a prosperous Australia. We want to keep the family unit, and we want to keep our freedom. We don't want to all have the bureaucracy bend, and that's the way we're going. I just want to get that monkey off our back.
No, for sure. Can I return back to a question? We were talking about Gerard and Malcolm's last, let's say 3 years, 6 years, 9 years. Specifically on policy, what would you like to see that they didn't do that you would do?
Okay, really... That's a good question, John.
Yeah, it's another one. So I returned to it. I was like, I feel like we can squeeze more out of this lemon.
No, look, it really comes down to the policies that they've put forward. With Gerard's policies for now, I like what Gerard stands for, but I don't like what he's putting forward in building bureaucracy, state bank, infrastructure, stuff like that.
Right, so it's fundamental sort of... That's
so
more of an ideological...
It is, and we, being a libertarian, I don't want any more bureaucrats to control, mate. You imagine if we had a state bank, insurance and that, and with the climate change narrative now, and we've got all those red and green bureaucrats in charge of that. That to me is the wrong thing. Private industry, private enterprise, we should be focusing on more than that and supporting that. Look at Trump's doing... private enterprise, we want to unleash and unshackle it, and that's a key difference with the libertarians. People think that we don't want any government, and I know some senators have said that we just want to, we're anarchist, and that's just simply not true. We want a more efficient government, and we want government closer to the people. So I think we want policies that put the decision-making process as close to the people as possible, as close to the local community as possible. And I think a lot of the policies put forward by One Nation and by People First are too far away from the people. And you can see in our policy suite that we actually really push decisions as close to the people that that have to run with that.
One of the big concerns I have about the general freedom movement and the mustering of the troops is if we don't get the balance of power in the Senate, it's very much just proposing bills that don't get voted on. That's my big worry. And I guess my question is, how would you use your 6 years so that you can raise awareness as a senator?
I think because as a senator, you've got a platform, yeah? And
a bit of legitimacy.
Yeah, you have. And so, and I think I mentioned this before, I would do more work because I've got really good feedback loops with the community that have built up over the last 10 or 15 years, being active on the ground. And like I said, getting that machine, that foundation, is getting more people attached to that and building that. And so we can have more branches, more representation, because we want to have more than just one Libertarian Senator, one Freedom Movement Senator. We want to grow that. So again, yeah, you're right, just a crossbench senator, unless we have the balance of power miraculously, is doing more work outside to use your platform and as a senator to build unity and to build that machine so we can come back with more numbers and build a spear that is going to actually make a real impact. Because we should learn from the Greens. 12 senators.
Yeah.
We need to have something like that, Joel. And we
Local,
need
yeah.
to do it. We need to have a machine that is going to, if we can all get on the same page with that and agree, we're not going to agree about everything, but if we can agree on that, well, let's get going with it, mate. Because time is ticking by. Look at it tick by. And, you know, the worst case scenario, which could happen, we talked about this, is that we have a Labor, Greens, Teal government.
That's where it's going. So in the lower house, I've been saying this in this seat for since September, actually October, September. I very much think it is going to be a Labor minority with, take your pick, the lower house being the Teals, which provide supply, or the Greens, or these Muslim independents. No one's really been paying attention to Muslim votes matters and them. And very simply, we saw the Teals go to the Lodge end of last year, early this year. Albo's meeting with them to secure his supply for the lower house. And then the Senate, he just needs the 12 Greens, and he needs one Pocock or Lambie. So your fight in Queensland, I was mentioning this to a mutual friend of ours who does numbers very well in the election. Your fight is not just in Queensland, it's in the ACT and Tasmania. And I'm really worried about if Pocock gets up and Labor, and we don't get a Liberal up in the ACT, to cancel each other out. And if we don't get Lambie out, it doesn't matter if we get you or, you know, even Craig or even Ditloff up, we still have to deal with those guys. And that's my concern. It's like, okay, well, that's great, but how do we, you're going to have to build some momentum over the next few years to build the local branches up and build, you know, but the ACT, I'm really worried about the ACT right now. No one's talking about it.
No one is talking about it. And, you know, let's hope that doesn't happen, that coalition that we've just talked about. But you're right, it's leaning that direction. And if it does happen, is that you know, it'll just make us more determined to come together, unite, and say, well, you know, this has happened, and, you know, like we've talked about a lot of issues here, and they're just going to get worse under that coalition.
Well, can I just put this forward? And I haven't said this on camera yet, but I've been thinking a lot about this. And you don't have to commit to anything here, Jim. You know, I'm not ambushing you with this. But I had an idea about how to actually do this as a third-party campaigner. You know, the neutral guy that sort of likes to back all the freedom parties. What do you say to 45 days after the election? Because all the Senate votes would have been done by then. 45, 65 days after the election, we convene every state. We convene in each state. And depending on the amount of votes you get, you send a certain amount of delegates. So the candidates that ran for you, you send a proportion of those in proportion to the amount of votes you actually got. That's your legitimacy. We vote on a set of principles, like the ones in the policy matrix. Okay, what is the freedom movement? We define it policy-wise. And then we also vote on a constitution of not bringing a party together. We're not going to change the parties.
No.
But we agree on some ground rules for the primary in 3 years that I'll host, where we'll have 3 debates. We'll hold them before the election, just as when we're expecting it. And at the end of it, we'll hold a primary vote with all members of the parties coming and voting for one candidate to get behind in each state. We'll hold the primary in each state, just like the Yanks. Is that again, I'm not asking for commitment, but is that something you'd consider? If you, obviously, once I show you all the detail and something written out was that something you'd think about?
Is that something like John Ruddock was saying in the grand primary?
It is, but there's no detail.
No.
And the problem was, you know what the big problem he had with his plan that no one, I don't want to criticise it.
No.
But the big problem with that is you could just flood it with 80,000 members like Clive Palmer. And so the real answer, I thought about this, the way you solve that is the amount of votes you get in this election is the amount of your legitimacy of the freedom movement, your proportional. So for, let's say there's 15% in New South Wales of freedom movement. If, for example, One Nation gets 5%, Libertarians 5%, and then another party 5% for argument's sake, they send a proportion of that. We'll only have like 1,000 delegates or 100 delegates. From the candidates that ran for them in that election, they can send those delegates to vote on the Constitution, of how the primary is held, and also to vote on the values generally of the freedom movement, which is non-binding. But specifically, I'm interested in voting on how a primary would be conducted, because if you can agree on that, fresh after an election, fresh after a vote's been done with legitimacy, and we conduct how a member, who is a member,
Yep.
how is it assessed, are they paying, and we can do that going into the next election. We have one candidate for Queensland, one candidate for New South Wales, one candidate for, just like the Greens do. If we do that, then this movement becomes very dangerous. That'll start winning lower house seats. I mean, we might win the Hunter this time, but that's the only seat.
That's right.
That's the only seat. We got to change that, because the problem I see with the ACT, with Tasmania, with Lambie,
Yep,
is even if we get senators up in all the states, we still got to deal with the ACT.
we do.
But on top of that, we've got to think about the lower house. This crossbench, we have 16 crossbenchers and 14 of them are left wing.
Yeah.
We can't form government. Dutton can't. That's why I was so confident in October. We can't form government. It's not possible for Dutton. We need some more people like in the Hunter to get up. And look, that's in short. If I can be the person that convenes a body of trusted people like Topher Field, Graham Hood, and a few others to form a board, you know, I'd love to chair something like that and facilitate that, because we all want the same things.
We do. Is
We
it
really
like
do.
is it like a freedom summit?
Pretty much, but
Yeah.
I want it to have legitimacy in that we have all the freedom parties convened,
Yep.
and it's based on the vote at this election. So work as hard as you can, may the best man win.
Yep.
But at the end of it,
Let's get ready for the next one.
we need longevity to our thinking.
We do.
And look, imagine a primary where we properly did it like the Republicans did with Trump when they were the 16
Yep.
in 2016, and all the different candidates that ran, and they had 3 vigorous debates. They had a primary. There was a timeline, and there were votes throughout the states.
Yep.
Something like that would be just phenomenal. Obviously, I'm gonna be very detailed about how this plan looks, but 45, 60 days after it, we're not voting on a candidate. We're voting on some ground rules for a primary.
The architecture.
Yeah,
Yep. But
yeah,
I think it's got to happen.
me too.
And otherwise, you're just going to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We've got to do something different. And I think the appetite is there. We're still immature somewhat. We need to grow that maturity and get around a table and let's get it done, Joel.
For sure.
I mean-
And look, of all the parties, I have to say the Libertarians have been the most open to those ideas.
Yep.
In fact, the very fact that we have a coalition ticket in New South Wales especially shows that.
Definitely.
With John Ruddick and the Heart Party with Michael O'Neill and Gerard Rennick. So the appetite's there. The freedom voters want it. The candidates want it. The volunteers want it. And many of the candidates want it as well.
Definitely.
But I think the main thing that's been stopping it is the upper leadership of different parties. And look, at the end of this, I think people, if I'm right, and I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm right about this election result, Labor minority in the lower house and the upper house, our voters, our volunteers, they're going to be looking for blood, and they're going to be looking at the leadership.
Definitely.
And we didn't look internally last time because people like Clive said, oh, the vote was rigged.
Yeah.
We just had a referendum and the vote wasn't rigged. So they can't have that excuse this time.
Well, you imagine how much more we're going to bleed in the next 3 years with that terrible coalition that you're mentioning. We will all be in pain, and we have to do something like this. We have to form up to get that spear ready.
For sure. And I don't think people have realised the freedom movement is literally dying.
Yes.
The people are getting older.
Yep.
Like the amount of candidates, donors, volunteers, voters that I call their number and I get a text saying, oh, sorry, Jim passed away or whoever it is.
Yep.
It's like, I don't think people understand. Like, we have a closing window, but I think you get it.
We've got to give people hope, and I think something like that will give people hope, and it gives us a foundation to build on, to get ready to build the machine so we can get our government back, mate.
Absolutely. And look, the last thing I'll say is with some states, like not Queensland, what you could do is you could actually go, all right, if you won the primary there, then for the state election, the next guy up, bam,
Yeah.
bam, bam.
Yep.
So it's not a question of if you get elected, it's a matter of when.
Definitely.
And you just got to wait, do your time,
Yep.
do the debates, work, earn the members' votes.
That's right. The democracy in process, mate.
Yeah.
Real live democracy.
Yeah.
No. And really, it's about looking at that architecture, making sure that, like Queensland, our states are massive areas. To make sure those people out in the far reaches have the ability to have a say, and it's just not all centralised around those major population areas. So that's what I'd really be pushing. Because look at Queensland, mate. There's a lot of freedom movement people right up and down the coast and out west, and they need to have and I think just looking at. And I'll say John Ruddock's architecture by just having, say, 1 or 2 meetings and deciding, well, that's not going to work in a place like Queensland. You can travel 12 hours from top to bottom and still not get across it. We've got to look at the mechanisms to make that happen so people feel that their voice has been heard and listened to, because they're not feeling that now.
No.
And I think what we'll see is a lot of people, because it's not happening in the LNP in Queensland, they might start to bleed, and people come over to us, mate, because they would see that we're legitimate, we've worked out a processes that's fair and equitable, and we're building something that's sustainable for the long term. We've got to do it, Joel. Mate, I'll be all in.
Right, that's awesome. No, that's really cool. Hey, you're smiling. Right,
That's good news.
That's good news.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, I think people want it. Look, that feels like a natural conclusion to the conversation. But I feel like I should ask you the obvious question. What is the number one thing that Australians should be talking about that they're not talking about?
Another good question. Just keep squeezing that lemon.
I stole that one from Trigonometry. That's another podcast in the UK. But they always ask that of people, and I'm always surprised by how not related to the discussion it ends up being. There's a blind spot,
We should be thinking about our country's future, and we should be thinking about each other. And I just feel that our governments are trying to divide us, and I guess to destroy what our country was. I'm not saying we have to move back in time. It'll never be the same, but I think that we should be proud to be Australia. We live in a beautiful country, and I think it's up to us to save it. And only through these different initiatives that we're going to do something different. I think people should be looking at to get on board this freedom machine, because it's going to get Australia back again, mate. An Australia that is slowly dissolving before our eyes, and people are worried about it, but you know what? They don't know what to do. And so what you're proposing, and you can see it, you can nearly feel it, can't you?
Yeah, magic.
We've got to give people directional clarity on how we're going to get there. And I think what you're proposing, and it's on the tips of everyone's lips in the freedom movement, that's going to have a pathway. And what you're proposing is a pathway. And I think that's what we've got to look for.
Again, I didn't bring you here to do that. I came here to bring you here to apparently, I brought you here so I could talk at you. No.
That's great.
Honestly, I brought you here to just bring to people's attention Queensland. There is a phenomenal Libertarian candidate running, and these are your policies, and this is how you're differentiating yourself from the others and what you can bring to the table. But no, it's been on my mind, and I look at I pride myself in looking at the Five Eyes countries and how their democracies work, and how their conservative parties have fallen, and how new forces are able to rise up or not able to rise up.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to translate it and be like, all right, maybe that's how we do it here.
It's our time to do it.
I think, yeah, I think so. So, Jim, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Joel.
Apologies if I offended your wife with the slight cow joke. I didn't mean it. I haven't met your wife. I'm sure she's lovely, and I'm sure you have beautiful kids.
Yes.
But I'm looking forward to meeting your cows in Queensland sometime, maybe after the election.
Let's go and eat a steak together. All
right, beautiful.
I did a big steak eating competition with Lockie Lay, and mate, he just wiped the floor with me. He even started eating my steak, a kilo steak afterwards.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it.
He's a big unit, isn't he?
He is. He's a steak eating machine, mate.
Yeah, I think we have the best steak in the world, honestly. Forget about that Japanese crap.
I just don't. Maybe I can. I can let out a question here.
Yeah, shoot, mate.
I just don't understand why, the farmers are selling their meat fairly cheap.
We had a video a few months ago Rami sent me. This is where it's coming from. We saw, was it in Syria or
was it in Iraq?
In Iraq, the food, a kilo of Australian meat was being sold there for how much? $15, $10?
No.
What was it? $5?
They were selling like the whole kettle for like something ridiculous, like $50, because like a kilo was $5.
Yeah.
A kilo.
Rami, you know what we get a kilo at the moment for our steers? We get $4 a kilo, And for our heifers, we get $3 a kilo. That's all we get. And you know, when you buy a steak in a restaurant, you can be up to $150 a kilo. What's going on? Our input costs are out of control.
Yeah. Yeah, go to Meat and Wine Co, $180.
And is that Woolies and Coles, or is that somebody else in the middle? Like,
it's the, remember the 77 bits of legislation that just for me, well, then all those other nodes across the supply chain have each got that legislation as well, and it just, the drain of bureaucracy increases the costs and decreases productivity.
Wow. It's insane. And this is the problem. This is the equation. That's a case study. This is happening with everything, Rami.
Yep.
There's a bureaucratic class that is adding all this red tape, and it's making everything more expensive. Like, we need like a proper royal commission to execute and take a chainsaw to the whole deep state. And this whole, you know, when I say deep state, I mean this bureaucracy. This, you know, we need a Department of Government Efficiency, or a DINGO, or whatever that stands for.
Yeah, totally.
I can't remember what DINGO stands for. Let's just say Doge.
I'd love to start that chainsaw.
So Lachlan Lade and I, we were in CPAC US in Washington when Milei, the president of Argentina, brought out the silver sort of chainsaw.
That was a crazy unit, wasn't it?
Yeah, for Elon. We didn't know they were going to Elon was going to be there. He came out. We lost it. We went wild. So much fun. Was it a good CPAC meeting? Yeah, it was good. Well, I mean, look, anything's better than obviously what we can host here because it's America, bigger scale, bigger stakes in every way, but higher stakes. But no, it was actually, no, it was amazing. I will definitely be going back to CPAC in December this year, or actually January, February next year. But I'll also be going back to, I want to see some Turning Point events as well. They got one in December.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, the Yanks are really leading us in many ways.
They are.
But Jim, thank you for coming in. I want to wish you the best of luck. If you're ever in Sydney, please drop in again. We'll do another podcast to focus a bit more on your policies, because I think there's going to be plenty of questions in the comments after this.
No worries.
And if anyone wants to support you, I'm going to put the link to your socials and your website to donate to you as well, so you can get behind your campaign.
Thank you.
And you're the first to find this out, but if you guys go to tpaust.com.au, just on the weekend we launched the actual volunteer funnel for parties. So basically, if you want to volunteer to hand out vote cards, put up posters, or even donate to the parties, we've got this volunteer funnel. You put your state in, Queensland for example, you pick your electorate. If you don't know your electorate, you can just click here to find out. But if you know your electorate, let's say Dixon, and you click your favourite party that you want to run for, let's say Libertarians for the sake of this interview, you click, oh, okay, maybe I want to do letterbox dropping, maybe make a small donation, maybe, you know, drop $1,000 in the campaign, do a scrutineering, $1,000 small donation, do a bit of scrutineering, and maybe just throw it in if you're a candidate, if you feel like you're someone that could really make a difference. If there's other ways you can put it in there, go next, put your details in, and just like a rugby ball, we're going to get that rugby ball and we're going to send it right to people like Jim, to people that you say you want it to connect with. So we're not holding on to that unless you actually say, I want to opt in. And look, that's just us doing a part of the job of just trying to connect everyone. So if you're listening to this and you've got a favourite freedom party out there, feel free to go on to that. We've got all the freedom parties on there. You can go sign up and get active, because it's not enough to like, it's not enough to just view or share content.
That's right.
We need boots on the ground. That's what the Get Up are doing. That's what the Teals are doing. The Greens are doing. 1,000 volunteers and electorate in Brisbane. That's how the Greens got elected in those 3 seats up there.
Wow.
And they have local, they have state and federal members of parliament as a result. So
that's what we got to do.
100%. Jim, God bless you. It's been a pleasure. I felt it very easy chatting to you today, and I pray that I wish you the best of luck. I'll hit you up with more details about that plan, but you're the first to hear it, literally, because this goes live later today.
Nice.
If you guys want to support Jim, you know, click the link in the description. And if you want to support this show, you can also click the link below, which has buy me a coffee, as little as $4 a month. We're building a little army up, and very soon we'll be doing a members-only live stream where I'll be sharing a bit more about the shenanigans that me and Lachlan Lade got up to while we were in Washington. But without further ado, I'll let you guys go. God bless you. Have a good one, and take it easy.